Good morning and welcome to 365 Days of Amazing Stories with Theo Mayer. Here we are on day 166, and I'm continuing the stories from 1001 Arabian Nights. Now you might want to remember that the second calendar had told his story, and the third calendar, as soon as he was done, said to Zubaydah, "My story is even more miraculous than the two that you have just heard. So please allow me to tell my story." And everyone was listening, of course, and Zubaydah nodded her approval, and the third calendar began. He said, "Fate is the result of my two friends losing their right eyes. But for me, it was not fate at all, but it was my own decision that left me in the state that I am in. My name is Ajib, and I am the son of a king, and my father's name was Kasib. And Kasib ruled over a large kingdom, and the place that he lived in, where his palace was one of the most beautiful seaport cities, well, that you could imagine. From this place, he not only presided over the mainland that was behind the seaport city, but also the islands that were just offshore. And when he died, the calendar said, I succeeded him to the throne. And once on the throne, I decided that I would make passage to the islands that I was now ruling over to win the favor of the people. Now, I had already making my rounds through the mainland and won the favor of those people and introduced myself to all who lived in that part of my kingdom. But when I went to the islands, I became so fond of sailing that after I had gone and visited everywhere within my kingdom, I decided that I would enjoy going off and seeing other parts of the world. And so I had assembled a very large fleet of big ships. And after all was provisioned on the vessels, we set off. And for quite a long time, the winds were favorable, the seas were pleasant. For 40 days, everything was, beautiful. And we were sailing along when that night, the 40th night, the weather changed. And we suddenly found ourselves in a huge storm. Big waves blown hither and thither, not knowing whether our vessels would even stay together. And after all night and all the next day, things going in the same way, the winds finally began to die down and the sea calmed itself. Well, our pilot, who was on board my ship, of course, had no idea where we were. We'd been so blown off course that, he confessed that he did not know. So he had one of the crew members climb to the tallest point of the mast to see if he could see any land, anywhere. After being up there for some time, he came down and he said, I could not see land anywhere. The only thing that I could see was well, a large mass of blackness astern. When our pilot heard this, he grew white. And after some moments of silence, he turned to us and began exclaiming, "We are lost. We are lost. There's nothing we can do. We are lost." And he kept this up long enough that soon every person on board the ship felt that they were lost as well. After he gathered himself together, I inquired, what's going on? What is the problem? And he said, "Behind us is the famous Black Mountain. It is a mountain that's made of adamante, and we are going to be drawn toward it. And once we are drawn toward it, there is no escape. Already there is no escape. You will see that by noontime tomorrow, well, we will be so close to that mountain, and its power is so strong that it will pull all the metal nails out of our vessel. The boat will fall apart, and we are all lost. We are lost." Well, the crew members, they knew not what to do. They began to write wills and will everything that they owned to each other. For who else could they write their wills to? By noontime the next day, it was just as the pilot had said. We drew very, very close to the Black Mountain. There was nothing we could do to sail away from it. And as we drew close, at a certain point, all of the nails and all of the iron from our vessels flew from them. And they joined with all of the other metal that we could now see on the sides of that mountain. Of course, as the metal and iron flew out of our boats, they completely fell asunder. And with that, every one of us was thrown into the sea as well. The crews went down with the ships, and I alone, was able to grab a plank and hang on to it. And as the wind and the currents moved me, I suddenly found myself in front of a stairway that led up the mountain. Now, had I landed to either side of this, even inches, there was no place to set foot on this mountainside. It was so rugged and so filled with the pieces of iron from all of the other ships that it had taken down. Well, I set my foot on these stairs. It led up the mountain, but even the stairs were so narrow that if a slight breeze had come up, I would have had to have fallen probably to my death. I made my way up the stairs now, and when I got to the top, it was, well, as the pilot had told me. He told me that on top of the mountain, there would be a dome that was supported by a number of pillars. And on top of this dome, there would be a bronze horse with a horseman on top of it. When I got to the top of the stairs, it was exactly as he had said. The dome was there, and on top of the dome, there was a horse, and on top of the horse was a horseman. The pilot had told me, so long as that horse and horseman are there, the effect of the mountain will continue to be the same. When I got to the top, I was so exhausted from everything that had happened that I went underneath the dome and out of the sun and lay down upon the ground, and I could do nothing else but fell into a deep slumber. And while I was asleep, an old man appeared to me in a dream. And he said, "Ajib, Ajib, awaken and listen to me. If you wish to see your kingdom again, follow my directions completely." And this is what he told me to do. Well, at this point in the story, of course, Scheherazade stopped and won herself another day of life with the Sultan and her sister. And we'll stop the story there as well. Okay, I hope you enjoyed. Have a good rest of your day.